And when I talk about preservation, we're not talking about just one generation. We might be stacking up the coins or the gold and silver, the real estate assets, the business assets, and feeling pretty good about it. But so I was talking to Angela and Megan at the back this morning. We live in dangerous times. Now, doesn't mean it's bad. There's lots of opportunity, but they're still dangerous. And I think we've lived in some amazing times in the last 40 years, and I can speak for myself because I started out in 1980 really on my own, figuring out what I wanted to do. We've had really tailwinds for 40 years, in my opinion. And you've heard the saying that hard times create strong men, and strong men create what? Good times. Good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. I think we're at step 3. That's where I think we are. I think our society in general, not people in this room, but our society in general, we've created a weak culture, weak society. And I won't get political here, but I just think that's where we are. So what does that mean to us that have built businesses or building businesses or driving our aspirations forward? What's our responsibility in that? I think we have a huge responsibility. I think we have a lot of opportunity to try to preserve our beliefs, our values, the traditions we grew up in this country, to try to carry them forward. If we don't do it, who's going to do it? Certainly the government is not capable. But let's really talk about what is wealth. The power of money or capital to affect the results that matter to the owner. Money, wealth is a tool to create change and transformation. Just think about that for a minute. Yeah, money and wealth can buy a lot of things, a lot of materialism, nothing wrong with that. You should have that opportunity and you should take advantage of that when you've worked so hard. But what kind of change do you want to make in your lives, your family's lives, in your community, wherever you want to create your impact? That's what money and wealth can do if we steward it the right way. Wealth is much more than money. There's the human capital, the people, our families, our staff, our vendors, the people we work with, all part of the process. Intellectual capital, it's what the people know in your own families, the people, your ancestors. What did they teach us? What lessons do they have that we need to carry forward? What have we already missed because we haven't kept and transferred that intellectual capital? Social capital, networks, again, like we are here today, the community, your networks, very, very important in our lives. You all wouldn't be here if you didn't understand that and believe that. And then lastly, but not least, financial capital. So you can see financial capital, the actual money, the actual assets, really comprises about 25% of the wealth preservation and what you want to transfer eventually. Yet we always think it's about the money. How do we set that up? How do we give the money to our next? There's an old African proverb that says, when an old man dies, a library burns. And just think about that. Because our elders are the ones that carry within them the stories of how they created whatever they created, whether it was a big family dynasty, and we'll talk about some of those in a minute, or just a family that struggled and worked together to create what they have, the traditions. That's where the core of the family comes from. And if we don't capture those stories and we don't carry them forward, then that gets lost in the transition, the translation. I was fortunate to capture some of my grandfather 20 years ago before he passed, on a video camera. We didn't have iPhones back then. It was just, you had to have a big camera. But I remember hauling that thing around and capturing my grandfather, talking about his stories, about his life. And it's so interesting to have that today, because without that, I probably wasn't paying a lot of attention back then. I was all about me, my life, but there's so much wisdom from a man who only went through high school, but just had so much inherent wisdom that I didn't want to miss that. My own father, I got him to record his memoir before he passed, and we got that transcribed and just put into a family book. These are the things that you can be doing right now, and it's so easy because, again, we have these things called phones that you can stop and record video, audio, wherever you are. Digital makes it so easy. In the past, we just had letters and photographs, and those are important, but you can have the ability to do this today. You just have to be intentional about it. Generational wealth is the bridge that connects the past, the present, and the future. It's very important to carry these traditions and values across the generations. Again, cataloging the memories, the stories. I was cleaning out my parents' estate with my sisters a few years ago, and just boxes and boxes and boxes of letters and photographs and newspaper clippings. Amazing what they kept. And all my life, I didn't think anything about it. It was all stuffed down in the basement of my parents' house and digging that stuff up. And now it's like a treasure trove. And like I'm really in charge now of taking those stories and cataloging and digitizing so that we have something to carry on the family legacy. And again, not some big family dynasty like we'll talk about in a minute, but it's just important, I think, that if you're going to keep your families together, and that's harder and harder today, where we live in an environment where kids are out and they get all their information off of what? Social media, TikTok and Facebook and Instagram. It's a world of sound bites. And where are they going to get the real culture if we're not embedding that within them? You've heard the saying from shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. Essentially, the first generation creates the wealth. The second generation oftentimes at least maintains it, sometimes enhances it. But what happens to the third generation? The grandkids. It's gone. Yeah, it's gone. Happens over and over and over again. 80% of all U.S. businesses are private, like ours, right? Closely held. Most fail or gone by the second generation. And only 10% function by the third generation. So you can see the dissipation of the well-intentioned first-gen people. By the way, how many of you here are first-generation wealth builders? I mean, you didn't get an inheritance or a trust fund. I assume most of us. I know there are some that are probably, in fact, I know somebody who in this group, I don't think he's here today, is carrying forward a generational legacy in the wealth. But most of us are first-gen. And so we have to think about this as to why this happens, why the wealth, but also the values and traditions are lost over the years. I have some ideas about that. You may have your own. So let's talk about a few. The Rockefellers. John D. Rockefeller, Standard Oil. You know the story. He was considered to be ruthless. But if you look at the history of John D. Rockefeller, he grew up in a family where his mother was very spiritual, very religious, had faith. And his father was kind of a scoundrel. He was a guy who would go in and kind of a snake oil salesman and would go from town to town and kind of rip people off. So he had this contrast in his family. And I think he took the best of both. Now, what's the best of his father? Well, he learned that you had to be savvy because his father would even make deals with his sons, John D. being one of those, and would charge them high interest rates and balloon payments and all kinds of things to try to trip them up because that's just who his father was. So John had to learn how to be savvy as a businessman, which was good. But his mother gave him the values. And if you know anything about John D. Rockefeller, very philanthropic. Even from the very get-go, when he was earning just, pennies and dimes and quarters and nickels, he was always giving away his money at an early age. And I think there's something to be said about that he was very, very focused on giving, charitable giving. And that transpired throughout his whole family. How do they maintain now in their 6th generation, I think there's 70 heirs now, still $11 billion that are carried forward. Standard Oil had to be broken up in 1911 because of antitrust laws. So they didn't carry the business forward, but through trusts and insurance, they carried the assets forward. But it wasn't just the entities. That was important. But it was about their family connections and culture. Because of his upbringing, John Rockefeller realized that having family connection and teaching his kids what he was learning was so important. So having regular family meetings, just around the dinner table, but then more formal meetings on a regular basis. Twice a year, they get the whole clan together, the Rockefellers, 100 or more, and they'd meet at one of their homesteads. Twice a year at least, and they had what they called a family forum, and they would talk about what was important to them. Certainly about the business and the wealth and what they're doing with it, but again about the values. And having those family meetings on a regular basis, I believe, was one of the reasons that they carried forward with the generations, and they continue to be able to be huge benefactors to this day. In fact, 2017, David Rockefeller passed away at age 101, and when they auctioned off his art collection in 2021, they got over $500 million, and it was all given to charity. Very philanthropic. They never lived in a scarcity mindset, but it was all by intention, The reason I'm telling you this, again, none of us may have billions of dollars to shepherd, right? But whatever it is we have, we want to make sure we're good stewards of it today, but also setting our kids up, because it's not just the money. In fact, I wanted to read something to you. I was going to do it earlier, but let me just catch this. This is something I found on X the other day, and someone with good intentions posted this. I'm going to keep it short. But he says, building generational wealth for your children takes a lot less money than you might think. He says, here's how I plan to hopefully turn $400 a month into $30 million for my boys, plural. He says, simple math, $400 per month, he's going to invest it. He believes he can get 10.5% interest. Okay, that's his assumption. He says in 18 years, he'll hit $230,000, and then if he keeps doing that, then he'll eventually, if the kids take over, eventually they'll get it up to 30 million. What he said here was, I plan to place the funds into a revocable trust that can't be touched by them, the boys, until at least age 35. So he's setting up some constructs. They can't get the money early. Okay, that's good. I also don't plan to tell them these funds exist. I'm thinking, well, is that the right thing to do? Again, I'm no judgment here. I'm saying, he says, my hope is that by then they'll be mature enough to appreciate what they have and not touch it again and ideally add to it. Because if they keep doing this the way I've been setting up for them, they'll grow to a whopping 30 million by the time they're 65. All right, is he wrong? Is the premise wrong? No, I think it's just incomplete. I think it's incomplete. Because helping your kids start to set up and understand what compound interest is and how to save and put money away, that's good. But why would you not be helping and showing them what this means to them? I wouldn't hide it. I think when you hide it from your kids, then I think you're doing a disservice. It would be like what's called sudden wealth syndrome. You know, lottery winners. How well does that work out for them? They don't have the mindset to carry whatever those winnings are. So if kids are just handed by transfer of wealth from our hard work and our good intentions, and just handed that wealth, what usually happens? Not good things. Not good things. In fact, more families have been torn apart by that kind of construct. Let's look at another one, the Vanderbilts. Cornelius Vanderbilt. Where are they today? It's gone. It's gone. The last of the heirs, you probably know Anderson Cooper on CNN, right? His mother, Gloria Vanderbilt, I think he got $1.5 million from her after they had billions. What happened? Total opposite of the Rockefellers. Cornelius, again, very, very savvy entrepreneur. Started out in shipping, ferrying people across, and then he went into shipping magnate, and then he transferred all that into the railroads during the Civil War, and just made a ton of money because he's a real entrepreneur. But he was so focused on making the money because they also came from a class of not very sophisticated people. Hard-working made the money, but they were not ever really allowed into the upper class, and that made him mad. So he wanted more and more. So instead of being frugal about the money, what happened to the heirs is they took it and they just built mansions. Well, the Biltmore, the Breakers. I mean, there's mansions all over, massive mansions that cost millions and millions of dollars today in today's money. Back then, it was a lot of money, and they frittered away over the generations. There is nothing left. Nothing left. Read these stories. Read these stories to your kids. Have your kids read these stories. I think would be a really smart thing to do because, again, you want to give them the mindset. Creating and preserving wealth, it's about mindset. It's about habits. It's about discipline. Not all about ROI. I bring up the Robbies just because we're in Florida, Miami Dolphins. Maybe some of you know. Joe Robbie, again, very entrepreneurial, young lawyer, put together the ability to buy the AFL expansion team, Miami Dolphins, when it was offered up. It wasn't all of his money. In fact, it was a fraction of his money, but again, through network and synergy, Danny Thomas, they put together the funds. Robbie got to run it, and in run it, he did very well. Until he met his fateful demise, respiratory disease, in 1990. And the problem was, they had trust set up, they had done some things well, but very non-liquid estate, very non-liquid, not enough cash. And so his wife needed the money, and so they had to break the trust, and then had to pay massive estate taxes, which then dissolved the entire estate and frittered away the rest of it into the various components of the rest of the family members who had no traditions, no governance, no constructs of what to do with the money, and they all fought. At the end, I think it was one of their heirs, Diane, said, this whole thing tore our entire family apart. Now, was that the intention of Joe Robbie? Of course not. He was like everyone else, an entrepreneur, hardworking, hard-driving, was successful in his own right. But because he didn't focus on preservation of not just the wealth, but preservation of the family, the traditions, what I think was really important to him, and what's important to all of us, but we just think that if we just do a good job making the money and protect our family, that we're doing the right thing. And so there's cases and cases of people who did it right and people who didn't. And again, I think it behooves us to teach this to our kids and think about having those family meetings if that's what you care about, because you can involve all the generations, the grandkids, bring them together. Be the focus for your family if no one's doing it right now. Be that person, generate that. If you're interested in learning how to invest safely and profitably during any economy, any market cycle, whether it's up, down, good or bad, then just download my free report, the Full Cycle Investing Report, below. There's been a lot of past cycle investors who have profited immensely, made great gains in the last 15 years during the bull market we've had. However, the markets are changing. They always do. There's going to be a day of reckoning. You can either be prepared, take advantage of the opportunities and protect your wealth, or put your head in the sand and do like so many other people, wonder what happened. If you'd like to be on the front edge of the things that are coming in the future, just download my free report, the Full Cycle Investing Report, in the description below. Wealth brings risks, responsibilities, challenges. It's often said that with the blessing of great wealth comes those great responsibilities. And I think we really have to feel that today more and more because of where our country's going. I think where kids today are feeling, many of them feeling very disillusioned, and I understand it. They're doing what they were told to do many times, go to work, get the education, come out with the degrees, and they got all this massive debt, and they're looking around going, I can't get a job to even pay interest on my loans. I can't buy a house. I can't make a car. Mental depression. I mean, it's epidemic today. I think if we don't start somewhere with all the wealth and the blessings we have in the community that we have here today, what can we do? What can we do to help this? So preservation. There's proprietors, the consumers of the wealth, that would be the Vanderbilts, and there's the stewards, the Rockefellers. Some of the essential questions to ask your family, wherever you start, would be, do we trust each other? Have we built that trust? Do we have common values? What are our missions? What's our causes? What do we really care about this world? Who do we want to help? And you can start small. It's small in your own community. It doesn't have to be some big, you don't have to have your name on buildings or libraries. It doesn't mean that at all. But if you start to have these conversations with your kids, now they'll start to have some meaning to them as they grow older and they start to develop their own entrepreneurial wings wherever they decide to go. The family education, again, this is so important. Why? Financial literacy. Something Jeremy Knopf helped me get connected with the Florida Department of Education in the last 18 months in an initiative, a mandate by Governor DeSantis to increase the requirements, credit requirements for graduation from high school to a point that had never been done before. And working on this, I realized how much that kids don't know. And just a few stats. Approximately 63% of Americans, not just kids, could not pass a basic financial literacy quiz. 63%. About 25% of Americans have nothing saved for emergency expenses. Only about 16.4% of U.S. students are required to even take a personal finance class in schools. Nearly 40% of U.S. adults wouldn't be able to recover from a $400 unexpected expense. And only 24% of millennials show basic financial literacy, according to a study by the National Endowment for Financial Education. So you can see it's a big problem. You can start with your family, but where else can we go with this? Who else can we help? Teach your children to fish so they can feed their families for a lifetime. This is the key. We all want our kids to have a great life. Many of us always say, well, a better life than I had. Don't have to work as hard as I did. I think that's absolutely wrong. I think we need our kids to have to get out and have some trials and errors. Yes, we're there to safeguard, make sure they don't fall off the ledge and make a big mistake. But until you take some risk in life and you have to find your own way and bounce back, what have you learned? Just having the safety net of a family that works hard and provides a roof over their head so they don't have to worry about it. Yeah, maybe that's good, but maybe it's not so good. What are we doing with our kids today to make them accountable? Merit-based. I don't know about you, but growing up, I was blessed to be in a family that I didn't have to worry about a roof over our head or food on the table. But my parents were also very responsible and didn't just give myself or my sisters money. We got an allowance. We had chores to do to get that allowance. If I wanted something better, I always want something better. If I wanted a better bicycle, oh, that Schwinn apple crate. Anybody remember Schwinn apple crate, lemon crate, orange crate? Yeah, well, of course, Darlene. if you're over 50, if you're over 60, you know that I wanted that bike so bad, but my parents were not going to buy me that bike. No way. I had the hand-me-down that I threw newspapers with, the clunker, right, Jeremy, the clunker. But I wanted that bike so bad. It was $99 back in the day. $99, 5-speed, six-shift, banana seat, drum brake. I mean, it was a beaut. And so what did I do? Well, I'm sure you all did the same thing. I threw newspapers. I mowed lawns. I took greeting cards, sympathy cards on consignment and sold them around the neighborhood. I learned how to be rejected by people who said, slam the door in your face, but I also learned, how to just stay there. And I made enough money to buy that bike. And I was like 12 years old, and I was like, that was great. I had my checking account because I wanted to buy tennis lessons at the local college campus where the tennis, not tennis pros, but the college players. It was $5. It was $5 back then for a 60-minute lesson. I think, $70 to $80 or more today. But those are things that my family helped me build on. If I wanted freedom and options, just having my own little black and white TV that I bought from Kmart because I wanted my freedom and options to watch what I wanted to watch and not to be in the family room watching Disney shows when I want something else, right? These are things you want to teach your kids. Don't give it to them is what I'm saying. Make them earn it because they'll respect it. If they respect it, then they'll be good stewards of it. Generational wealth is not a luxury, but it's a responsibility. It is a responsibility to the next generation. We've got to do something to help this generation because there's 74 million of them, the next generations, that are coming up and are going to be running this country in a few years. And if they don't have the mindset and the financial acumen and the understanding of what it takes, we're in deeper trouble than I think today. In our group in Freedom Founders, we have a subset in our group. We call it Next Gen. We invite, not just invite, we encourage the younger adults of our members to come to our meetings. We do a whole subset of Zoom calls, and we bring different people in, and I'd love to have some of you be a part of that, where we just sow into those young people and give them some of what we've learned. Because you know how it is, Jeremy, your kids will only listen to you so much, and then they need to hear from somebody else, right? Well, it does. It helps. It helps to hear from somebody else. So we're trying to do a lot of things to give them exposure. And we're not about trying to get them to go into real estate or dentistry. It's not that at all. It's whatever path they want to take, but we want them to have a better understanding of what opportunities still lie out there in this world. This greatest country on this earth. But we want to expose them because they've been indoctrinated. Most, again, unknowingly, even in their only family dynamics, but indoctrinated by the public education system, by social media, and they're just getting the wrong information. And I think, again, we can do a lot to preserve and turn this around in our country. So we love doing this for the young people. It's inspirational, it's aspirational. It's really become one of the biggest causes and missions of my life because, let's face it, folks, at some point, we have enough money, do we not? I mean, seriously. I mean, there's people here I know that are still building. Yes, we're still building. Jeremy, your daughter's saying yes. She's good. At some point, we have enough, and it's like, well, then what do we do? I never want to stop, quote, being relevant. It means working. I don't consider what I do work. I love what I do. When you love what you do, you want to keep doing it, and you have scorecards, and yes, you have to have a business that still remains profitable and all that. I get that, right? But what is it really about at this point in life? What are we doing with it? Yes? So that's what and I think when you can live your life with that kind of passion and about more like Rockefeller contribution and giving back, everything expands. And I didn't think that way all my life. I didn't think that way at all early on. It was all about me. It was all about I was trying to create some moat and some protective aspect of my life that I could fend off of everything. And when my daughter was sick with leukemia and a liver transplant at age 12, all that money and all my hard work didn't mean anything. It meant nothing. She survived it, but I had to change my attitude about what's all this really about. And I think we can do that for our young people. Advisors, mentors, community, obviously very important. And again, that's what we talk about here. Who you invite into your life to be advisors, mentors, third parties, the community, part of a community here. Be very particular about who you invite in. Be intentional about that. Not everybody's going to fit. Doesn't mean that people are bad, but not everybody fits. Have some filters. Understand what it means because it's your time. It's you're investing with your time in other people, and they're investing with you. We often talk about in our group, you're 5. Relationship capital. Who are the 5 people who right now you could click off who those people are, the closest to you who you could trust them with anything. You could trust them with your assets, your bank account, put them in an irrevocable trust, make them trustee. You wouldn't worry. Who are those 5 people? Could you name them today? Think about it. It's really important. And then the circles go out from there. Who are the next circles out? Because we have these different concentric circles. And I was thinking about this year, how I have been somewhat negligent in my own right about staying in touch. Not with the 5. The 5's easy because those are the people you talk and text to and all the time. You got it going all the time, right? But you can only do that with so many people. So where are the next rings out? Who are the people I should be maybe connecting with once a month? And then once a quarter, twice a year, once a year. Build those rings out. You can't be fully connected with everybody all the time, but be intentional. And these people will move in life. Doesn't mean they're bad or otherwise. You'll evolve, they'll evolve, but realize these relationships will shift in different ways. So I would just suggest you make some kind of going back to the old terminology, Rolodex. Yeah, thank you. I can always look at Darlene. Digital Rolodex. Figure out who those people are. Ron, you know what I'm talking about. Thank you. All right. But look at that list. I've had my executive assistant, Lindsay, who runs my whole schedule, and it's like, that's great to have that person. So making her intentional about, okay, here's the people, Lindsay, that I have not been connecting with. Here's the list. Get them on my calendar. And if that's just a 15-minute quick call sometime, that's all it takes. I was doing that with a friend of mine just last week out of Fort Worth. Great guy, Ken Wimberly. I don't know if any of you know Ken. He's a great guy. And we were talking about this very thing, about how the connections with people that we have are so important, yet we get busy in our lives, and many people they fall off because we're not in the same rooms. Maybe we move different places in our lives, and they fall off a little bit. And I think it's important that we go back and reestablish those. So I would just do that with intentionality. Figure out what works for you, what kind of a pulse. How are you going to make that happen? How do you get it on your calendar? Agreements and governance is back again to what the Rockefellers, I think, did so well. They had a vision statement, a mission statement. They had, a family constitution. They met and they talked about it. They all subscribed to it. They all were invited to engage in it. It wasn't a patriarch that was just top down, this is the way it is. No, he understood that you have to engage the other members. You have to figure out what's important to them. They're not all going to be John D. Rockefeller entrepreneurs. They might be more artsy, crafty. That's okay. But you still want to give them a place, a seat at the table, because that's what's going to keep the family together. Don't try to make them you. That doesn't work. But give them your values, your traditions. That's what you want to carry on. It's like Jack Nicklaus, right? Is he just going to give his golf clubs to his kids and go, there you go, you got it? No. He's going to give them the mechanics of the swing, his habits. That's what they need to have, not his clubs, right? So that's what we've got to give our kids. Red teaming. Who's heard of red teaming? So this came from the military, right? Used a lot today in cybersecurity. But red teaming is war games, and where the blue team would be the friendly team, and what they did is they set up an adversarial team, the red team, whose job was to break down all the assumptions, all the strategies, find all the holes in the game plan, right? So you need to red team different aspects of your life. Certainly, I think Lee Arnold talked about yesterday, he didn't call it red teaming, but stress testing your business. So have somebody red team your business, red team your estate planning, asset protection. Have somebody red team your family constitution and your wealth generation philosophy and strategies. Get outside people to weigh in and say, hey, I'm here to lay it out. I'd like you to shoot holes in it. You could do that right here in this room. You could pick your 2 or 3 people and go, hey, could we do this together? Could we collaborate? What if we did it for each other? How valuable would that be? Because we all have blind spots. We think we've checked all the boxes, but there's always a place where there's going to be a hole, and if someone could point that out to you now, not have that become a problem at a crisis time, how much better would that be? And then there's the black book. What's the black book? Yes. It's the game plan. It's the when this happens. It's when I'm gone or disabled or my wife or the key people. What happens? You need to have this written down. Who are the first people that the next in line calls, whether that's your spouse or your oldest child or whoever's in line to take over, because you don't know what's going to happen. So you've got to have that in place. It talks about where the keys to the vault are, passwords, and who are the other people to contact. What's the list? I've talked to so many people who have been blindsided by this. I'm sure you have too, that so-and-so passed away unexpectedly. It's always unexpectedly. And all of a sudden, it's like a person who has not been in the loop in the family, who has not been part of the business, so to speak, or the finances, they're sitting there going, what do I do now? It's the least we can do for our heirs, our family, to have the black book. And again, today it's so easy because you can record it. If you're like me, I don't like to sit down and type a bunch of stuff. Just record it. It's always going to be updated. It's a process. It's not an event. It's a process. So you do it, and then you add to it. Shoot a video. Make your little scrappy outline on the back of a napkin and just start shooting videos. Don't make it perfect, and then give it to somebody, give it to an EA, give it to somebody, and they can transcribe it and start putting an outline, and then you update it on a regular basis. At least once a year. I'd probably do it more frequently than that because things change. Things change all the time in our lives. Things change in family dynamics. People get married, people die, your assets change. You've got to be upgrading this. Just do it. It's the insurance policy for your family. I don't want to think about being gone and then having my wife have to take over. She's smart, she's brilliant, but does she have all the keys to what's in my head? No, she doesn't. I gotta lay that out for her. It's really, really important. Here's a great book. I've mentioned John D. Rockefeller a number of times today. This is the book that he wrote, his letters to his son, John D. Jr. It's a great book. These are the letters. This is the story. This is him giving the wisdom to his son, John D., who was a great son and carried on much of his constructs and his constitution, his values and traditions. Pick that book up. It's a wonderful book. You'll love reading through it and just see the wisdom that John D. Rockefeller gave to his family. This is what you want to do for your family. And hopefully if you still got parents or grandparents, start pulling it from them now. Get the video, get the camera out, start grabbing the stuff from them. Make it easy for them because you just tell them, Mom, Dad, I just need you to write your memoir book. Isn't going to happen. Not going to happen. You can help them do it in a way that makes sense for them. I was fortunate that in 2015, I had my dad, he came down to one of our family, this is family, Freedom Founders family. Freedom Founders group, he came down to one of the meetings, and at one of the breaks, I just had an idea. I don't know where it hit me. I just said, Dad, would you be okay if I just brought you up on stage? We just sat down for a little bit, and I just asked you some questions about life, what you think. And my dad was always a player. He said, sure, I'll do that. And so I put him up on stage and ask him a number of questions. I'm going to just give you a short bit of it. My dad was he's an eye surgeon, and he honestly loved what he did. He loved treating patients, and there's so many stories of patients today of his that come up to me when I see them back at home and just mention, the works he did. He always acknowledged other people. I went with him on rounds to the hospital when I was a little kid. He'd walk through the halls, and there'd be a custodian. He would make eye contact and acknowledge them. And the ladies who worked the cafeteria line or the nurse aides, he acknowledged everybody. He was not so busy. Some doctors, like, get out of my way, I'm important, just work. He was never that person. And I so much want to be like that person. So I brought him up on stage, and I'm going to have Chris just play that short little clip on that, if you would, Chris.
How do you want to be remembered?
How do I want to be remembered? I want to be remembered as a kind person, a thoughtful person, someone who left the world better than it would have been without my input. I think that's my answer.
Dad passed away 2 years after he was on stage. Esophageal cancer took him quickly, which was a blessing, actually. It was a blessing. But what I wouldn't give to be able to have a conversation with him today, what I wouldn't give to do that. So my provocation to you is build your library. Make it fireproof. Do it now. Do it with intention. Don't live your life with regrets. Thank you very much.